Welcome everybody to a special episode here on the Soaring channel of Flight Simulator X here, where I'm going to do a little tutorial on how to fly. Today I'm flying in a 737-700, and it is a Southwest logo on the plane. In fact, I'll show you guys that while I'm talking here. I'll set up my little view of the tower view so you can see what the airplane looks like on the outside. I'll zoom that in a little bit. So you can see it's got the Southwest logo on it, 737-700. It's not one that comes with the program, with the game. You have to download that, and I will have that information in the comment or in the description below. But you know, a lot of people may not have a good idea of how to play Flight Simulator X or how to fly a plane in general, and hopefully I could be of assistance with that. So I'm going to go into my cockpit view. This is just my generic cockpit view, so it's a little easier to see the controls and see what I'm doing. But I'm going to be also flying using air traffic control, that's what this window is over here, the air traffic control window. And so I'll be going over, as I'm doing it, I'll be going over what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and hopefully it'll help people who may not have ever played this before, or may not know their way around a cockpit, and maybe you'll learn a thing or two. Now I do have to say, quick disclaimer, I'm not a professional pilot, so anything I say, you know, don't take it to heart. You know, don't take it as dictum in the real world. It may not do, you know, people in a real airplane may not be able to do the same things I'm doing and get away with it. So I just want to put that out there now. I'm not a professional pilot, but I am an airplane enthusiast, so I know my way around a cockpit. But anyways, we're in a 737-800, and we'll pull up this real quick and show you we're going from John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, and we will wind up at Logan International Airport in Boston. So that's what I have programmed in. Our cruising altitude will be flight 200, flight level 200, which is 20,000 feet. And we'll go over that in just a moment here. But first, what we've got to do to start off is request clearance from Kennedy Tower. And so as you can see over here on the air traffic control menu, you have a 1 and a 2. So you can just press those buttons on your keyboard, or you can click on the actual thing. But we're going to tune to Kennedy clearance on 135.050. And we're going to request our IFR clearance.
Kennedy clearance delivery, Southwest 1912, IFR to Boston, ready to copy. Southwest 1912 is cleared to Boston Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain 9,000. Departure frequency is 127.6, squawk 5006.
Okay, so they just gave us a lot of information. You always want to read back and acknowledge what they said, so we're going to do that real quick.
1912, cleared to Boston Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain 9,000. Departure on 127.6, squawk 5006. Southwest 1912, read back correct. Contact ground on 121.65.
So I've done flight number 1912, which is in honor of the Boston Red Sox. Fenway Park opened in 1912, so that's why I did that. But anyways, they've told us to fly and maintain the airport runway heading, which is currently what we're on. We're on the actual runway that we're going to be departing on. If you guys want to see how to taxi to the runway and how to request all that clearance through ground traffic control and all that, I can show you that in a different video. But for now, we're already on the runway, but we're going to type in the airport runway heading, which is 045, into our autopilot controls right up here on the top. So our heading is going to be 045. We'll select heading, the heading selector knob, which will keep the airplane trained on that heading once we activate the autopilot. Right now it's not activated. I switched the GPS nav switch to GPS mode, which means all of the orientation of the plane will be getting its direction from the GPS, which is right here. That purple line is the direction of travel towards Boston. So Once we get into out of the airspace of the airport here, we're going to switch over to our VOR lock, and that will lock us on that purple line heading towards Boston. So we're going to set our speed for 250 knots. And in the meantime, actually, while I'm setting this up, I'm going to just tune to Kennedy ground and request my taxi, even though I have been taxied to the appropriate runway already.
With Sierra, ready to taxi IFR. Southwest 1912, taxi to and hold short of runway 4 left. Contact tower on 123.9 ready.
And always acknowledge what they say.
Taxi 2 and hold short runway 4 left. Southwest 1912.
Alright, and what I'm doing here is I'm setting up our autopilot for our altitude hold of 9,000 feet, which was by request of the controller. So we also want to set our auto brake to RTO, and we want to set our flaps to 1 degree down, which is just hit F7 once. I also set our auto throttle to arm, which means once we're in the air, I'm going to go ahead and hit this button right here, the speed hold switch, which will try to keep the plane held at 250 knots. And we are all set up in the cockpit here for our departure. I'm going to hit the overhead controls and just make sure our lights are all set. So I'm going to turn on our landing lights, and which you want to keep on until 10,000 feet. Change our engine to flight mode. All of our lights are on right now. Turn the no smoking sign on, fasten seatbelt sign, turn the panel lights on. I shut off the majority of the graphics and weather and all of that. And jeez, my cat just won't leave me alone. Now he's knocking my crap off my table here. But anyways, you want to make sure that you're all set here on the overhead panel, ready to depart, which we are. And one final thing we've got to do is go ahead and switch over to our virtual cockpit mode. We'll pull up this display so we can see it a little better. Obviously we'll turn off the air traffic control display once we're in the air. But we're going to go ahead and request our departure from Kennedy.
Kennedy Tower, Southwest 1912 at runway 4 left, ready for takeoff, IFR to Boston. Southwest 1912, cleared for takeoff, runway 4 left.
Okay, acknowledge the clearance for takeoff.
Runway 4 left, Southwest 1912.
And we are all set, so we will not hear back from air traffic control until we are in the air. We have been cleared to take off, so we have our parking brakes on right now. To release that, we're going to hit period, but before we do, we're going to up our throttle to about 50%. Let that balance out here, and then we'll hit F4 to max throttle and release the brakes. Now once we are airborne, we're going to hit Z to activate our autopilot. You'll see this little light will come on, and we'll also hit this switch, which is our speed hold switch. So we're getting up above 100 knots right now. We're going to start pulling back on the yoke once we get to about 135, and that will help us get airborne, which we now are. So we're going to hit Z to activate autopilot, G to activate the gear. We're going to press on this little switch to activate our speed hold switch. We're going to press F6 to go to 0 flaps. Our brakes should kick in here in just a moment.
1912, contact New York departure on 127.6.
Acknowledge the handoff.
127.6, Southwest.
And we are airborne.
1912.
So as you can see, first we're going to tune to New York departure and contact them.
New York departure, Southwest 1912 is at 1,100, climbing 900,000. Southwest 1912, New York departure, roger. Altimeter 2900, Southwest 1912, turn right, heading 065, resume on navigation, climb and maintain 900,000.
Okay, so we've been given an instruction to turn right to heading 065.
Turn right,
I'm going to acknowledge that.
065, resume on navigation, climb and maintain 900,000. Southwest 1912.
But they also gave us an instruction to maintain our own navigation, or resume our own navigation. So what I'm going to do is hit this VOR lock switch, which will lock us on our purple line here, which is heading towards Boston. So I just reset there. So the airplane will orient itself to that purple line, and then once it's lined up, it will level off and make sure that it's heading straight in that direction. So we'll turn off our switch here. Currently at 3,000 feet. What you're hearing is that's traffic. The American Pacific flight is traffic in the area. We've got to acknowledge our handoff to 123.7.
Going to 123.7.
You have to make sure that you're the only one on the channel speaking at that time. If there's another person speaking, you won't be able to do so until they're finished, so just make sure you keep an eye on that.
New York departure Southwest 1912 is at 3,900, climbing 9,000.
All right.
1912, New York departure.
Now you can see
altimeter 2992.
they're giving me an instruction of 2992 for my altimeter. Now that is, if you look at the main display here, primary flight display, right here on the bottom, 29.902. That's how many inches in mercury our barometric pressure is set to for our altimeter, which means that locally, if it's a different number, they're going to instruct us to make sure that we're at that number. What you do on Flight Simulator here is you press B to reset it to the local setting. However, because we've got the weather at just a standard fair weather day, all of the barometric pressure readings will all be 29.902, so we don't need to worry about that. Another thing to say about that is the transition altitude is typically 18,000 feet, or flight level 180. And what that means is once you reach 18,000 feet or above, the standard pressure setting is 29.902. So that's what the standard is above 18,000 feet. So we are aloft. We'll go back to our cockpit view here. We're locked in on our course towards Boston. We're climbing. We're currently at 6,000, almost 900 feet. Once we approach 9,000, the plane will level off, but we will probably get our instruction to continue our ascent to our cruising altitude of 20,000 feet, which is flight level 200. I just turned off our auto brakes, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. We seem to be cruising pretty good. We'll bump up the speed a little bit on the autopilot, make sure that we're all set there. Now, as we are approaching Boston, and as we are making our descent into Boston, we'll look out the window here while I'm talking, we're going to need to set up our controls and our autopilot to get us lined up for an ILS approach. I'd like to do an ILS approach to show you guys how to land using the instrument landing systems, which is the easiest way to land. Not all airports have ILS capabilities, but I do know that between here and Boston, well, at least Boston Logan International Airport does have ILS capabilities on some of their runways.
Southwest 1912,
You can see right there,
flight level 190.
they went ahead and gave me the instruction to increase altitude to flight level 190, which is 19,000 feet. We'll acknowledge the instruction.
Maintain flight level 190, Southwest 1912.
All right. And we'll switch back to cockpit mode.
Southwest 1912, contact Boston Center.
Virtual cockpit mode.
132.3.
All right, so we're now being handed off to a new air traffic controller. That's what this is, what they're doing. So we'll acknowledge the handoff. And let me just pull up the, this is the radio stack right here. And as you can see, we're currently tuned into 123.70 on our COM 1. When we click on Tune Boston Center 132.300, you can see that that switches this over. So now we are tuned into that. It automatically does it for you.
Center, Southwest 1912 is climbing through 10,200.
It's just to show you.
Level 190, South Southwest 1912 Boston.
See, they've given me that
Roger. Altimeter 2992.
2992 setting. So from time to time throughout your flight, air traffic control will come in and tell you to switch over to a new air traffic controller on a different frequency and give you the frequency number. And all you need to do is acknowledge it and you're good to go. So we're above 10,000, so we can go ahead and shut off our landing lights now. We're going to keep our strobe light, anti-collision, logo lights, panel lights, all that fun stuff still on. Fasten seatbelt lights will keep on because we're still climbing. Once you level off at your cruising altitude and you can speed up to cruising speed, which in this particular plane is about 325 knots, then you can shut off the fasten seatbelt lights at that time. But as I was saying, we're going to set up ourselves for our ILS approach depending on what approach and runway we are given from the air traffic controller. And we'll set up our navigation system here, or our navigation radio, to tune into the frequency for the ILS approach for that particular runway. So what that means is, and you can go in, I'll show you on here, if you go in and click on map, if I did it right now you wouldn't be able to see it just because how I'm recording this, but you click on the map and it will give you the ILS frequency and the ILS heading, course heading, which is what you would type into here. And I'll go over that in just a little bit as well. But on the map, all you have to do is you click on the particular airport that you're coming into, and it will give you all that information. We're going to acknowledge the handoff here to 128.1.
128.1 for Southwest 1912.
And tune on over, and then contact Boston Center.
Boston Center, Southwest 1912 is at 14,500, climbing flight level 190. Southwest 1912, Boston Center, roger.
Now what I'm actually going to do, once we get to flight level 190, they're actually going to increase our altitude to 200, flight level 200, which is 20,000 feet. So I'm actually going to select that in the altitude hold switch right now, and just let it go there, because that's just the way it usually works. Is once you get to the assigned altitude, they will assign you the new altitude. You just want to keep an eye on that though, because if you do go over your assigned altitude, technically you are illegally flying at that altitude. Based on air traffic control regulations, you have to stay within, I think it's 60 or 80 feet of the assigned altitude. So you can see there's actually a little bit of traffic here, about 8.5 nautical miles to my left. And they're currently flying at about 14,000 feet. It's a C-208B Grand Caravan, and they're flying at 14,500. So yeah, when you're flying, you want to keep an eye. I'm actually going to shift my seat up a little bit. You hit Shift Enter to do that, and you want to look around, at all times. Make sure you're not on any type of collision course with another plane. Good pilot knows its surroundings at all times. Even though air traffic control is responsible for making sure you're not on a collision course with any other aircraft, you want to be careful, anyways. You always want to be alert of your surroundings. I'm going to hit Shift F3. I'm going to pull up our little display window here for our GPS. As you can see, we're flying over the Atlantic Ocean right now. This is Hartford right here, or Hartford rather, I should say. In Connecticut, and once we cross over the landmass here, we're actually going to be over Connecticut and Rhode Island. So we're going to be coming in on the south side of Boston.
Southwest 1912, climb and maintain flight level 200.
See, as you can see, they gave me the instruction to head to flight level 200. We'll acknowledge that.
Maintain flight level 200, Southwest 1912.
So that way, because what happens sometimes is it gets locked in the vertical speed. It levels you off at the level that you're at, and then once you increase the altitude, you actually have to play around with this knob a little bit to make sure that your plane is still climbing. But as you can see, we are now leveling off, so we can hit the gas, and jump ourselves up to cruising speed,
Southwest 1912.
which in this case we'll do about 320.
124.525.
Turn off the fasten seatbelt sign. Get up and walk around if they want. Acknowledge the handoff.
124.525. Southwest 1912.
Okay, so tune over to that.
Boston Center, Southwest 1912. With you, flight level 200. Southwest 1912.
Now what you're going to see now
Roger.
is this number right here, which is your estimated time of entry into the airspace for the programmed destination, which in this case is Logan International Airport in Boston. And once we start increasing our speed to about 320 knots, and hitting our cruising altitude, or our cruising speed rather, that number is going to go down significantly, because what that means, it's actually calculating based on your current location and speed to tell you how long it's going to take for you to get into the airspace. So we're only about 14 minutes away from the airspace, usually with about less than 10 minutes, maybe like 8 or 9 minutes left to go. That's when we'll get the call up to start our descent into Boston. And when we do that, what we're going to do is start setting up our approach and all of our settings and everything on our autopilot to bring us home safely into Boston. So now we're cruising at about 316 knots. That's the true airspeed right there. The assigned airspeed is 320, so it will actually balance itself off eventually to 320. As you can see, there's a little yellow line here followed by a series of red dotted lines.
Southwest 1912. Contact Boston Center on 124.85.
Acknowledge the handoff before I finish what I was just saying.
124.85 for Southwest 1912.
Okay. Switch over and contact Boston Center on that frequency.
Southwest 1912. With you, flight level 200. Southwest 1912. Boston Center, roger.
So what I was saying was this yellow line followed by the series of red dotted lines. That is the max speed for this altitude. Is roughly 335 to 340. So you want to stay clear of that for the most part, because once you hit over 340 and into this red area, you'll get an overspeed